Hi everyone, Chris Friend here from Jenson USA. I'm here with Jeff from Eminent Cycles, and he's going to show us around their new 29 platform, the Onset. Thanks for inviting us down here to this beautiful day in San Marcos and to take a look at the Onset. My first time on an Eminent bike was up at Sky Park. I demoed your long travel 27.5 bike, the Haze, and my first initial thought was, oh man, this is definitely an engineer's bike. I felt like it climbed up really well, descended really well, and excellent braking. Can you tell me kind of what's new with the Onset?
As you've already experienced the Haste, and the Haste was our first bike that we put out with the AFS suspension design, and it was kind of a proof to the market what we can do with our suspension. And because we had such positive feedback on the AFS design, we doubled down and put it back into our 29er. A couple little tweaks here and there relative to a little more anti-squat, similar anti-rise, similar leverage ratio, but designed it around the 29er platform. So we took everything we learned and everything that was great about the AFS and then put it back into the 29er and made slight tweaks here and there relative to geometry in the 29er platform to bring out the new look. That's the most obvious change.
Good looking bike. I love the color. It kind of reminds me of like the Gulf racing colors from the 60s. Can you tell me a little more about AFS?
Our AFS platform stands for Advanced Float System. And the reason why we call that is because we basically float the shock in between the seat stay and the chain stay so that it flexes as the rear end flexes as you're going around corners, going over jumps. And the thought process there is it'll decrease lateral binding on the shock and keep moving. Second part that's unique about AFS is this long rocker arm. And you can see that if a bump comes up right here at the axle, a vertical force drives that up. Immediately that long rocker arm is going to put a movement to the shock. And the way that materializes, most suspension systems have a pivot here. And we wanted to move that pivot to the rear end as far as possible so that it would eliminate any lateral play high in the bike and move it to its least influential position. So by moving it all the way back here, you get the opportunity of a stiffer rear end and better force transfer to the shock. And then the last thing, the thing that everybody kind of looks at that's like, oh wow, is the brake bracket. And so what you see here with the brake bracket is we've put it on a separate independent moving bracket from the traditional suspension design. By moving it onto a independent bracket that articulates in its own path different than the suspension, we were able to bring the braking anti-rise numbers way down below neutral so that wherever you're at in the bike stays active and fully plush without any brake jack or any suspension pack. And you can see that as it moves through the travel here as you cycle the suspension.
Man, if you guys have never seen this before, but the way that rear brake is isolated is just crazy cool to watch.
The reason we started the company was about suspension design. We've been riding mountain bikes for about 10 years and riding bicycles since we were 5 years old. And at the time, back in 2012, 2013, bikes weren't very stiff laterally. You might have been stuck with a proprietary shock that had proprietary mounts. You couldn't put anything else on it. And so we started thinking about, is there an opportunity to improve the suspension design in the market? Is there an opportunity to get a better ride experience for what we were looking for? And so we started thinking about it, and that kind of led us to what we were after was a bike that stuck to the ground better, gave us more traction, more confidence on the bike so we could go faster and have more fun.
From riding the Haze, it does not feel like a 160-inch travel bike when you're pedaling uphill. And you mentioned earlier something about axle path and how you guys kind of designed the frame to maximize axle path. Can you share a little more with our viewers about that?
When we originally got into this, we really wanted a little bit more axle path. And the thought process was that a long axle path allows the tire to interact with the bump more and basically roll out of the way as it moves through its travel. Instead of when it hits the bump, it bounces up and moves over the bump as the bump passes by. What a rearward axle path allows you to do then is smooth out the bumps, create a more stable ride, keep the tire on the ground longer, and essentially go faster to have a higher performance product.
Can you share a little more about like what's specific to the Onset that's really neat?
First things first, our frames are all 100% unidirectional carbon fiber. We don't have two levels of frames. We just make the premium frame right from the beginning to try and create the stiffest, highest performing package that we can offer. Second thing is that all of our cable guides have internal tubes in the carbon. So when you stick the cable in one end, it comes out the other end. You don't have to use a fish wire to get it in and out. The other thing we do is we use angular contact bearings at our pivots so that you get a good laterally stiff bike. We use a carbon down tube guard here so that it adds durability and stiffness to the bigger hits on the rocks or logs that you might undertake. We knew we had a unique look with the square seat tube in that we didn't want to put a round seat clamp on top of it. We went after an integrated seat clamp in the frame and designed it for dropper posts. So the way that we did this was it basically clamps the seat post 180 degrees and pushes it against the frame so that it doesn't point load the seat post or bind it from moving. And it provides a really great integrated look to the frame and just adds to the aesthetic of the product.
Well, thanks Jeff for having us out here. This is a beautiful bike that rides even better. We're excited to work with Eminent on this. We're going to be offering some exclusive builds that are only available at Jenson USA. So if you're interested in checking out an Onset or even a Haste, give one of our gear advisors a call. Again, Jeff, thanks for having us out here, and keep pedaling.